Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to Connecting Knots. I'm Lorraine Hooper. I'm the Director of Finance, Information and Estates of the Trust. This is my first go at hosting Connected Knots, so I hope you will bear with me, as I'm sure I'm going to make some inevitable mistakes. We've got lots of really interesting stuff for you today. Lots of videos, but also, of course, the usual opportunity to ask questions. So you should be able to see the chat. If you put your questions into there, we will pick those up later on in the session and endeavour to answer them where we can. I hope you've all had the opportunity over the last few days to enjoy some of the sunshine. I don't know about you, but I'm never satisfied. I was too hot yesterday and I've been moaning about it being grey and getting wet today. So if you're anything like me, probably can't win with the weather. So as I said, lots to do today. So what I'm not going to do is chat for too much longer. In the first instance, I'm going to hand over to our chair, Paul Devlin, who's going to give us a little bit of an update.
Thanks very much, Lorraine. Hello, everybody. Yep, Paul Devlin, Trust Chair here. It's just a few things I wanted to reflect on. I've unfortunately had to miss the last couple of Connecting Knots, so I'm really pleased to be in with you on this one. And first off, just to say a big thank you, as ever, for all of your hard work over this last month or so since the last Connecting Knots. And in terms of the weather, my reflection on that was just acknowledging how tough it is having to work in PPE in incredibly hot weather as well. And I know that at times like this, we can sometimes discover some limitations around the estate and capital pieces that we're working in. So big thank you to you if you've been working through this hot weather, and particularly if you've also been having to do that in sustained times of PPE. Just wanted to mention a couple of other things. There's something next week, I think it is. John and I have got a cafe session with our BME network, and I'm really looking forward to that. It's just something I wanted to highlight as just one of the pieces where John and I try to make sure that we get opportunities to both listen to and have conversations with BME staff, but also it's an opportunity to be held to account a bit for our board level leadership around tackling racism and striving to continue to improve race equality. So it's a session that I'm very much looking forward to. There's a lot going on across the system and the integrated care system. It's generating lots of new advice and guidance, and whilst in lots of ways that doesn't impact necessarily directly with lots of staff and services, it's a really important part of how we approach working in collaboration with other organisations. I think what I would say is there's a lot of pace to that, and it's something that we'll be watching and hopefully being able to translate as effectively as we can as we get to understand any impact that it has. I just wanted to say I was really pleased that on our agenda today is a piece around supporting staff carers, and I wanted to share, I know Tracy is leading us on that session, as she's aware. It's something that I had a bit more of a personal link to over the last 9 months or so. I'd personally been involved in looking after my mother-in-law at our home, and indeed that then turned into end-of-life care. And whilst it was only a wee snapshot, it was an important snapshot for me, and I think it's a really important piece for us as an organisation to think well about how we support staff carers, and I just wanted to acknowledge that from a personal perspective. And the last piece I wanted to mention was that I'm delighted that we also have an opportunity just to briefly celebrate again the Oscars. and I thoroughly enjoyed the Oscars. I've heard some really positive feedback from people on that. I really hope that you've been able to either be part of it or to have looked at that at a later stage. It's an important thing for us to be able to celebrate some of what we do, and the Oscars is a piece of that. So that's all I'm going to say. Looking forward to today's session, and I'm going to hand across to John now. John, over to you.
Great, thanks, Paul. Good afternoon, everybody. You'll have noticed the sharp-eyed amongst you. I'm in a different office today with different kits, so I'm a bit clumsy on the various buttons and technology. But you're very welcome. We're looking forward to this afternoon's session. We've got some great pieces, as people have already flagged. My particular one I wanted to highlight amongst the all-round excellence is the piece on mental health support into schools. So on one of my rare excursions out of the office in COVID times, had an amazing session with one of the ministers who came to a visit to look at the excellent work our mental health support into schools is doing. And there's a video later on from Laurie and others who are leading this work. We're really front-footed on this nationally. The reason it's important, not in and of itself, is this sort of input into young people's lives from a psychological perspective has so much impact and potential impact over the life course. So I'm really proud of what we're doing. I think it's a great piece of work, and looking to support from an organisational and system perspective how we can continue to roll it out across the county. A couple of specific bits just in terms of update. The first is just some further notes on where we are pandemic and vaccine wise, not to go into any major detail, but just to, I guess, confirm what many of you will be noting on the national media, that we're in a bit of an upturn at the moment in terms of cases, and that's certainly true in our county and across the East Midlands. The better news is, though, that in the areas where they're a bit ahead of us, so in the northwest of the country and elsewhere, the rates now seem to be levelling off. So it seems, with fingers crossed and touching wood, that we're not going to be anything like the sort of numbers that we were seeing, new cases that we were seeing at the beginning of the calendar year. But the other important stat amongst the many is the relative lack of transfer of case numbers into hospital admissions and then deaths. So you will have noted that the admission rates, although going up a little bit, are not going up dramatically, and again in some areas are starting to tail off. And those that are being admitted are either younger compared to earlier in the year, haven't had vaccine or have only had one dose, and almost all these cases of the new Delta variant. So that's overall probably better news than a week or two back. That leads me to the next point, the related point about vaccinations. We've done a great job both within the organisation and more broadly across the system in vaccinating our staff, our patients and the local population. There's still a lot of vaccinations to do. And the continued message is for our staff groups, don't worry if you think you've missed a date for your cohort. There are increasing number of pop-up clinics. You don't need to book an appointment. If you've missed it, you haven't. There's still plenty of opportunity to get a vaccination. We will continue to urge people to avail themselves of the vaccination. And to note, you'll have seen on the news that we're just entering into a consultation period as to whether it will become mandated, as it will be in care home staff. And that consultation is, I think, a 5-week one. So that's very much watch this space. And it won't be down to individual organisations to decide. It'll be a a central diktat either way. The second thing I just wanted to emphasise is how busy all systems are at the moment, not only across all our services, whether it's community, mental health, admissions, all teams are seeing quite a huge increase in demand and an increase in acuity too. And that's mirrored in emergency departments, primary care across the country. So this is traditionally a time of year, isn't it, where it never gets lack. It never reduces, but the sort of pre-summer phase can sometimes be a bit of a chance to draw breath. But that's certainly not going to be the case, and we are aware of this and trying to help support teams as much as possible. And again, you know, if there's things that you think we can do to help further, then let us know. I was going to mention the new integrated care system proposals that Paul's mentioned earlier. I won't repeat it because sometimes it can seem a bit dry. But one of the ways that I always look at it, all the people that we see, all our patient service users, use other parts of the system, whether it be predominantly primary care, but a lot of our patients use acute community services and local authority services too. And anything that we can do collectively to make the flow across different sectors better, so people get a better experience, is all for the good. So if you're thinking of getting involved or wondering how to get involved with those sorts of conversations, ask, and you don't need to seek permission to start to have these conversations with other sector colleagues, because now is the time to really drive that. And then finally, just to flag sort of more outputs from the staff survey. We're continuing to do engagement across the organisation as to the "you said together we did" 3 emergent priorities that we're going to be focusing on. And the first is the experience of BME colleagues across the organisation to improve their experience and focus on continuing to focus on reducing bullying, reducing racism for all. To increase the offer and the focus on staff health and wellbeing. We're really motoring on this, but there's always more to do to expand the offer and enable access, with a particular focus on our disabled staff. And the third priority is about reducing violence, the experience of violence across our staff groups. If you want to be part of those conversations, then contact staff engagement, and for further information is available on Connect. And the final thing to note is that there's the first culture leadership workshop, which is tomorrow at 9:30, and the focus will be on just and restorative cultures. So without further ado, I'm going to thank everybody for what they're doing. These are choppy waters at the moment, and given what everybody's been through in the last year, it can sometimes be a bit tough to navigate, but thanks everybody for what you're doing. I'm going to hand over to Dr. Sue Elcock, who's going to do my role as medical director. Sue, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Hi, everybody. You may or may not remember, I was in this exactly a year ago when I came back to the trust. So it's very nice to be here a year later. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about, you see, I did this last year and it got such good that I thought, you know, this is where I tell you that I'm actually a forensic psychiatrist by background. So how I started off looking so cute, I have no idea, but I use this quite a lot, just to sort of induce a bit of humour, and also it competes with Paul's purple outfit for the Oscars, I like to hope. But in terms of being medical director, so I came back to the trust a year ago, say, to be forensic director, and obviously that's my passion in terms of my background, but I spent 5 years before that working as medical directors across 3 other trusts. So I'd worked in Lincolnshire Partnership, Lincolnshire Community Trust and Leicestershire, which was a joint community and mental health trust. And I think leaving the trust was really heartbreaking for me. So I'm not going to talk about what John thinks I'm going to talk about, as you might have just guessed, because that's not particularly my style. And coming back to the trust has been just like coming home. And I just want to thank everybody for making me feel so welcome. You know, I have, it has literally felt like coming home, and the amount of support I've had of colleagues for last year. So moving forwards, if I can just have the next slide. I don't know if I'm supposed to move it. I just thought I would. I'm a very picture person, and I'm also last minute at doing any presentations. So I do apologise to my colleagues who were trying to do my slides into the pack last night. But I think sometimes people forget that the medical director role isn't just about doctors. You know, yes, I'm the professional lead for all doctors in the trust, you know, across all divisions. And that's really important to me to remember, that we're not just a mental health and a forensic. You know, we have community health services. And I remember when the trust merged, whatever, that might not be the right PC word to use, but I remember when the community services came on board. And I still don't think we've got the right necessary sort of recognition that we are a joined, you know, trust that does physical and mental health, and how we make sure that we all work across. So for me, that's really important. That's one of the reasons that I've put in the bit about leadership in the middle there, because for me, these posts, these roles that we want to do are about leadership. I'm also then your voice into the board as well. So while some people think that might be a bit stuffy, I've put it in because it's a really important place to make sure that everybody's voices are heard. I also, in my portfolio, for people to understand a little bit more, is I have psychological therapies and psychological as a profession. And we've just recently, I think I'm allowed to say this, I don't know, but I will. We have just recently appointed a successor for Maureen, who's just retired. So we've broadened that post. So it's psychology plus psychological therapy. So as we can start to really look at the whole picture across the different 3 divisions. In my portfolio, I've got research as well. So most of you, I'm sure, will know Mark, who heads up our research department, working with the IMH as a collaboration. We've got audit colleagues, presented a really great annual audit report this morning at our quality committee to say just how much clinical work everybody's managed to be still doing in audit. So despite all the pressure that everyone's been under, we've still been looking at the national audits and local audits that we're required to, which is not a position all trusts are in. So again, thank you to everybody that's involved in that. I couldn't find pictures for some of these. That's why there's some are a bit more exciting than others. You'll guess that the pills one, although it doesn't represent pharmacy full stop, it was what came to my mind. But it's pharmacy in terms of the whole range of meds management that we need to understand. And I'm sure you'll know Matt as the chief pharmacist. Got medical staffing, which is a fairly new sort of entity. We've always had the function, but as a sort of discrete entity on its own. So we've got Anne-Marie heading that up. I've got medical education. The medical bit, I put the stethoscope, well, I found the picture of the stethoscope because I thought that was sort of slightly more interesting, because it's really important to remember about our medical education. It covers undergraduate, postgraduate, it's our whole conduit. You know, as a teaching trust, we need to be really passionate about that. I'd only got 5 minutes, so I wanted to put on the next slide a little bit about me. And this always makes people laugh because people translate it in different ways. So the square at the top isn't meant to be that I'm a square. It's meant to be that I'm really open and transparent and really black and white and clear. So if you ask me a question, you'll get a really clear answer, be it a yes or a no, but you'll be told why, and we'll have that dialogue. The middle one, last time I did this, nobody got, so I'm not going to ask for what you think it might look like, but it's about play hard, work hard. You know, I come to work and it's fun and I'll work hard. But then it's okay to have decompression time as well. It's not about doing that, you know. There's no point having meetings from 8 till 8 every day if you're not accomplishing anything, for example. And then the bit on the right was meant to be about having a laugh. I think it's important to laugh at work and to enjoy it. If you don't come to work and enjoy it, for me, that's not right. I like eating cake. That's why that picture appeared. The bottom middle one, again, people that don't. This sometimes surprises people, sometimes it doesn't, is I like having training sessions. I've gone back to the gym and personal training, and one of the things is my trainer's an ex-boxer, and so I particularly enjoy the boxing sessions that we do where he pretends to allow me to hit him, which is great fun. And then the last one is slightly redundant, and I put it on because I'm missing it. So I particularly love holidays, and I've done a lot of cruises, often go with my mum. She's on her own, so once a year we often go off and do a big holiday on a cruise. So I'm missing that. But I still thought I'd put it on because it's what's important to me. And I suppose the last thing before I finish, because I've got 1 minute, is I wouldn't ever ask anybody to do something that I wouldn't be willing to do. I think that's a really important value to me. So although I wasn't supposed to talk about that, I just thought it might give you a bit of an insight into what you're getting. And I'm just so excited about working in the trust. So thank you. I'm now going to hand you over to a video, and this is from my ops colleagues across the 3 divisions talking about their reflections and experiences and priorities across COVID. So I'll hand you over now.
So,
Morning.
good morning, Del, Keeley. So we got together last March and started to talk about COVID, didn't we, and how it was impacting on our services and on us as leaders. And now we're back together again, some 15 months down the line. It's been a really difficult journey. So what's that journey been like for you as a leader and for your services, and where are you now?
So I think it's been a really interesting journey, and I always, I know, look on the kind of positive lens, but there's been some real learning nuggets, I think, for us as a division, and also me as a leader. And I'll talk probably about my lived experience as a leader in the first instance. So I'm not going to lie, it's probably been one of the most complex journeys I've ever been through, at a point where I started a secondment in acting up only 4 weeks before the pandemic started. And at first, when it first opened, I suppose a great thanks to my team, really, who put a red flag out to me very early days around. I went on to a bit of a heroic moment of feeling I needed to do everything for everybody, and I suppose I lost myself in that. And thanks to my team who knew me and put a red flag to say, hang on, Keeley, you need to look after yourself, because at that moment I was driving myself and not really thinking about me within it. And since then, I will say, it's not been without its wobbles either, and there has been times where I've wobbled and think, oh gosh, I can't do this anymore, and the intensity of the response and what was required from us really probably pushed me to have those wobbles. But what I would say is, what a fantastic team of support and that social network from my team around me. I was allowed to have those wobbles with my team, and they safety netted me. And likewise to you, Chris and Adele, I've always known that you're on the end of a Microsoft team call for me, and you've been a great support to me in my moments where I do need to just offload and debrief, really. So I won't say that my lived experience is all full of rose-tinted glasses, and I think it has taught me something. But the most critical learning that it's taught myself is I needed to look after myself first, so I could enable myself to look after my team and be the best version of myself to the team. But I've learned to understand that you can't do everything overnight, and it's about those, I call it, and my team will know this, the slices of cake today, and we'll eventually get to deliver the whole cake. But what's important this week versus, and doing that balance risk, really. But I'm so in awe of my team that have supported me through it and enabled me to feel comfortability in sharing my vulnerabilities, really.
Well, I mean, it's certainly a different challenge now, isn't it? Back last March, if you remember, we had all the different conflicting guidance, didn't we? And availability of PPE, and there was lots of worry, lots of anxiety. And I guess, you know, as a leader, you pick up on that and you share that anxiety. And then as we've gone through it, we've had outbreaks in some of our, you know, different clinical areas. That's been really challenging, giving people the right sort of kind of assurance and, you know, trying to make people feel safe and do the right thing. But, you know, on top of that, just a massive amount of transformation work in our services. So you know, the staff are actually saying they're exhausted, and it's not a surprise really. And I guess for me, it's difficult because you want to do what you can to help, and sometimes you do feel a bit powerless. So we're doing all the road shows and the wellbeing stuff, and that's the right thing to do. But I think a lot of the problems are caused by the fact that sometimes we just can't recruit people. So where people are working in really, really stretched services, and they've had COVID and all the trauma from that, and you know, their own personal experiences as well, and how do you support them? And that's where I struggle sometimes, really. You know, just want to do the right thing and don't always know the answer. And I guess as a leader, you want to know the answer, don't you? Because you want to do the right thing. So I mean, that's where I've struggled a little bit more recently, just trying to get the balance actually of, you know, keeping on with business as usual, getting the transformation done, managing COVID. It is a massive ask of everyone. So it is a balancing act, and it's difficult.
Yeah, I think for me, it's been a complex journey really. We're having obviously high secure, and we have to, within high secure, we've been working with the other two high secures, but then trying to manage the division which have got obviously medium secure, low secure, and then community services. I think I found it much better that we had a consistent meeting twice a week with the division, and we made sure this time that everybody were doing the same thing. If there was any questions asked which I couldn't answer, which during this, people were looking to me to give the answers around, you know, what they could and couldn't do, and I hadn't got them answers because, you know, I don't think anybody else had them answers. It was all new to us, but people are looking to you as the leader. Especially during these meetings, they're collecting the questions up and asking me answers as if, you know, I know everything about COVID, which was very difficult to be able to say, we have to hold on, we've got to go to ICT, and then come back a week later and to do that. So I think we did a roadmap, when we've got a roadmap, which from when the government set out their roadmap, we followed that and put that into the practice of our services and how that would reflect in our services, which has been better. I think the difficulty for me as well is all the questions we got from patients. I got letters after letters after letters from across the division about things they would like to do, you know, and if it didn't sort of meet what they were doing in the general population, and explaining why, because obviously they're living in houses of 10s to 20s, that would take a whole house down or a whole ward down, which was really difficult to explain to them. So I think it's really affected us patients, which I found really difficult. And it's how we support our patients through that as well, because our staff are exhausted. I think they did absolutely brilliant. You know, we had general sickness was quite low because people were coming to work. Now we're seeing a completely different picture. People are not going off with COVID, they're going off with general sickness because I think they're exhausted. But we've got through it. I think it's been a lessons learned. I don't think anything slowed down this time for us as leaders. I think we, like Chris said, your transformation carried on. All our stuff carried on. We were still doing loads of stuff around our governance and stuff like that. So that's what I found difficult, is trying to balance that as well as COVID and doing all the stuff. MS Teams has been fantastic, but it's also, for me, been a real hindrance because I've not had time to breathe. I've gone from meeting to meeting to meeting, and then you're doing your stuff later. However, you know, it has been a blessing, hasn't it, where, you know, we've been able to do those stuff and move forward. I think as a trust we've done a really good job of us all getting together in ICT and making those decisions, which has been helpful, because at least you've got that bit of reassurance that if you're making a decision and it goes wrong, then you've gone through the trust, and, you know, we're all in it together.
Yeah, the Microsoft Teams is a blessing in many ways, but I can imagine it cheeses off people who work under me, because I'm constantly, when I want to talk to someone, looking at the status, and as soon as it gets green, I call them. They're not having much rest in between meetings when they're on red. So I suppose that really cheeses them off. But you know, when you just want to talk to somebody, it's really convenient, isn't it? Just
And I think that's really interesting, Chris, that you mentioned that, because we've had those discussions in our kind of recuperation conversations, and I think there's also some anticipated anxiety around, actually, we've become more productive. What I'm hearing from individuals, they become more productive because they're not travelling about here, there and everywhere. But if life does go back to some face-to-face return, then they're worried around actually not being as productive as they have, and that emotional burden that they feel it within that. And Adele, picking up on your point around that lived experience from your patients, I've been really touched by the lived experience of our staff, and it's been some of the most powerful stories that around how do we value that personalised approach. And I appreciate there's some staff still in response mode and not quite ready to reflect and think what it's meant for them, and how you time that recuperation for them so it makes a good recuperation. But some are already a long way down that recuperation journey, and how are we going to manage a good recuperation for all in such a personalised way when there's such a diverse lived experience? Because not only have we got as work life lived experience of dealing with the pandemic, we've got as home life, and how much does that complicate? And I think it's taught me never assume anything, because you can assume a lot of things, but that's coming from my bias, and it's really opening those conversations to hear about everyone's lived experience and how do we hear from everybody to make that good recuperation.
I guess it's just really important now, isn't it, that we really do listen to what people are telling us and try and help with the well-being stuff. You know, we do all the road shows and the champions and, you know, everything, you know, that we can think of really, but we need to respond what people are telling us. I think one of the biggest challenges actually is workforce, where we've got so many vacancies.
Yeah.
You know, we trying different ways to recruit and get people in, and especially with the growth in some of our services, it's really difficult. But you know, with all the other wellbeing stuff, I think that will help if you're in a fully staffed environment.
We're providing all this recuperation support of wellbeing, but some of our services are unable to access that as much as we would like them to. But we, as a leaders, you know, we'll support what we can, obviously, and we'll keep going. And it's good that we've got each other to bounce off, I suppose. So thank you.
No, thank you, Adele and Chris, for all the support that you give to me. You've helped me immensely to get through the response, and just knowing that you're on end of a phone call away for when I have me wobbles, it's greatly appreciated.
Just press it when it's green.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Keely, to Adele and to Chris for talking to us actually with some real honesty about what it's felt like over the last year. And I'm sure there's an awful lot of things there that resonate with a lot of us about how complex this has been, how uncertain it's been, but actually how much we've looked after each other, and the need for us to look after ourselves, particularly as we recuperate and we restore coming out of this. And that handily segues over to Tracy Orlandi, who's our staff health and wellbeing lead, and Tracy's going to talk to us now about the new health and wellbeing hub.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad to be here again. I seem to be on relatively regularly, which is a great testament to the support that our trust wants to offer to staff. I'm actually on for two topics. The first one is the new mental health hub that's been commissioned by NHC and I, which couldn't be more timely, I think. And then I'm going to lead into carers support, following on from Carers Week last week. So I'm going to attempt to share some slides and hope that it works. I may fail at the first hurdle. Oh, phew. Here we go. So let me just check if everyone can see those slides. Brilliant. And I've got a red ring around it, so unless I hear otherwise, I think that you can all see these slides. So the first thing is, and what a wonderful segue from that very personal experience from our colleagues there. Nationally, we're very aware that as a community as a whole, the impact of the pandemic has had several phases for people, including the early days of, we can do this, through to, okay, we'll keep going. And for many, through the course of the last 6 months in particular, there have been phases where people have been struggling with the pandemic, and then for some, sadly, into crisis where things become very difficult to maintain. So that's the UK as a whole, or worldwide really. But what we can also measure that against in terms of our workforce, particularly with our workforce demographic, is the amount of carers responsibilities that we have, which we'll talk about later, the financial implications, bereavement for some, the psychological safety around the PPE, which we talked about earlier, and the need for workplace adaptations and working differently. Now, what that led to was a national review around what does that mean in particular for NHS and health and social care. And what they found from these studies was that there were some specific organisational factors that were different from the rest of the workplace within the UK. There was a strong need to put people first before ourselves, so that's self-sacrifice. In some organisations coming through the staff survey, there was an indicator of bullying and harassment, self-pressure to keep going, and Keely shared that so eloquently in her presentation. Sometimes I think the hardest person on ourselves is ourselves, if that makes sense. A long hours culture, and then for some, again, workplace violence and aggression. All of those statistics were recently published, and many of you would have seen this launched last week, which is the House of Commons Health and Social Care Committee report on workforce burnout. And that has some really compelling data around the presenting issues that actually line very much to what Chris was talking around, and the health and safety executive stress management domains, which is we can have a wonderful all singing and dancing wellbeing programme that's proactive, but if the vacancy rate is high, or we haven't got the right skills mix for the areas of patient care that we're delivering, then actually what we really need to do is address those issues parallel to the support that we offer people. Otherwise, we're just going to be on a constant conveyor belt of trying to support staff on the backdrop of really big issues that need to be addressed. So I was delighted that that report was commissioned. We've just done a review against that in terms of what we're organising, what we're offering as an organisation, and I'm pleased to say that we are providing many of the factors that they recommend, although there's still some work to do. So in December of last year, and leading into this year with the new commissioning of the financial year, NHSE and I commissioned what they were calling initially a mental health hub, which is, there's 40 by region, and our hub is hosted by Notts Healthcare, and it's called the Nottinghamshire Staff Support Hub. What I'd like to bring your attention to on this slide is that there's 3 ways that staff can refer into this service, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what we offer in a second. People can phone us on the 0808 number that I've just circled on the slides. They can email us on an NHS Net account, or they can visit us on our webpage and make a self-referral. So if it's 12 o'clock at night, you're sitting there thinking, I've been struggling for some time now, and I'd like to make a referral, you can refer into this service, 24/7 through different mediums. The service is completely confidential. It's multi-professional. I won't go through each of the posts, but you'll see there that we have occupational health specialists, counsellors, therapists, psychologists, project managers, and a whole range of outreach support in terms of some of the key issues that are concerning data nationally around domestic violence, suicide prevention, and a prevention agenda in its entirety. So a multi-professional team that's completely confidential, separate from your employment. So we hold information completely separate from any of our internal systems such as ESR. We're also very separate from GPs, but with consent of the individual, we can share information where appropriate, and certainly recommend GP intervention where people may need more of a medical model or treatment. And we have a real multi-agency referral pathway, which I will share with you in a moment. We're really excited about the outreach and would love to hear from managers within our organisation around the topics that are occurring in your areas where you may need support. So I've been asked by several colleagues in adult mental health to give presentations around the wellbeing support that's on offer so that people can gain access to that. So just spending a little bit of time on the client journey, because I think for many of you watching this today, you'll want to know whether this might be a service that can support you, colleagues, or people that you directly line manage. Our preferred referral routine is that an individual calls us, because then we can take an assessment at the time of call if they're in an appropriate area, support them through that referral pathway, and make sure they get the help that they need at the time that they need it. However, we're also happy, as long as the individual's aware of it, to get referrals from managers. There's often cases where people will say, I just haven't got the energy to pick up the phone, and that's a very genuine reason why somebody else may make that referral for them. We also accept referrals from our occupational health providers, and this is a system-wide service that provides this service to a 60,000 workforce headcount across the integrated care system. So we're taking referrals from many organisations. There's also an organisation called Practitioner Health, which is specifically for senior leaders and medics, and they will refer into us on occasion as well. And we have really strong links with our own IAP service, Let's Talk Wellbeing, some great relationships forming there between Andy Sears and Simon Lamb and our service. So what will happen when somebody calls is they'll be greeted by one of my team. Calls are often answered by the clinician, the lead clinician on shift that day. We'll ask for a presenting overview of the situation, and then to be honest, it can go in a very person-centred approach. So we will adapt the response depending on the individual circumstances. And as a very quick overview, that may be an assessment for burnout, anxiety, depression, PTSD, where we may refer people, perhaps not for the latter one, but through to IAPS or third-party organisations, through to people who may present in crisis, and we have a warm transfer through to our crisis team in those occasions. There's a growing need to keep people in a holding pattern where perhaps we can do an assessment and a triage, but the waiting list to get into that therapeutic input is a significant period of time. So we may keep people safe within a holding pattern. And in extreme cases where it's clinically appropriate, we may be able to offer some treatment within that service provision as well. And last but not least, we will signpost people to the existing infrastructure that's available within their own organisation. So for us, that might be our employee assistance programme, occupational health, and sometimes people just need practical HR support. Today I've had a number of inquiries actually where I need to speak to my infection control colleagues, and that's linking to the warm weather and PPE, and I think I've seen a couple of questions within the chat for today as well regarding that topic. So last but not least on this slide, because I'm going to be moving into the carers presentation in a second, this service will be underpinned by a roadshow of events which we'll be launching in the Trust as well, with a Wellbeing on Tour approach that will be starting in July. We've actually had many requests to arrange a long COVID clinic for staff. So we may replace the Cycle to Work event in August with a long COVID event. So watch this space for this to be changed and adapted. So this really sort of demonstrates the Wellbeing on Tour topics. As you can see, there's many. And what we hope to do is, through taking a proactive approach to speaking to people and supporting them with their lifestyle choices, to really hear, around the difficulties that people have had and make sure they know where they can go for that more significant or structured support. So really excited to be launching that with you here today. Now, I'm going to move on to carers because I know that time is of the issue, and I was really delighted to be involved in Carers Week last week, working with the involvement team around patients' visits to the community, but my specific interest is around workforce support. And I'm just going to share with you some data really. So the key fact on this slide is that the average age for people potentially becoming a carer is 50, and we know that our average age in the organisation is between 45 and 51. So there's a really good chance that somebody that you know in the organisation is currently caring for somebody, either a family member or a friend. And the key issue from this slide is that 70% of those carers will have a negative impact on their physical or mental health. So we are anticipating to see a number of carers come through the hub, and we will support them as best as we can. in relation to COVID, we know that there's been a significant impact, and I've been speaking to colleagues who have taken in elderly family members who were shielding, and they've lived with them for a lot longer than perhaps they'd planned. Paul shared his personal experience with us of his caring situation, and what that means is that there's a financial implication. There's increased caring needs for people. Carers aren't getting the break. The stat is that most carers will have at least 20 hours of unpaid caring responsibility on top of potentially part-time and full-time hours, and 64% are reporting deterioration in mental health. So again, if you're managing a team, these stats are really crucial for you to understand the impact that that may be having on people within your own area. So moving on to Notts Healthcare, that means on those stats that approximately 1,300 staff will be experiencing exactly those issues that I've just described. But what we're concerned around is how many people who have caring responsibilities actually consider themselves to be a carer. The definition's on the slide, but there's a few bullet points that may help people understand whether they actually fall into that criteria or not. And we are really pleased to be able to launch a self-recording mechanism where people can tell us through ESR that they are a carer. Now, the benefits of that are that if we know how many carers we've got, we can ensure that we put the support in and tailor it to the areas where there's most need. So are there any areas in our trust where we attract people either through lived experience or through the working provision that are more likely to be carers, and make sure that we're putting the support in place for those people. You'll also be invited to join us on a mailing list that you can opt in or out of at any time, where we will keep you up to date and abreast of the staff support offers that we have within the trust. Now I've only got 2 minutes, so before Alex starts to worry that I'm going to go over time, all of this is contained within some new Connect pages. So if you go to the staff health and wellbeing pages, look for carers information for managers and staff, you'll find a web page that contains all of the information regarding the support that's available. And that includes practical support around needing leave. And for those of you that aren't aware, there are 2 policies where people can look at leave. And we understand carers, it's not always planned. So there are sometimes needs for people to have urgent and unforeseen leave away from work. And then on the emotional support, we offer everything from the hub through to financial, legal, consumer advice that people may need for some of the more practical support. And we'll be launching very shortly some carers cafes, which will be called Care for a Cuppa. They'll be clinically led, but peer support groups to make sure people get support. And as I've touched on earlier, the mental health hub and rapid access to assessment and referral. And I think the last thing to note on this slide is that 38% of carers have stated that they're not really comfortable talking about their caring responsibility at work. So what can we do, each and every one of us, to change that culture where we can feel confident to speak about the challenges that we face in the way that Chris, Keeley and Adele just did with us. Now I've got 1 last minute, so I'm going to come off my screen if I can. And back into presenting mode, where I'm going to hand over to Laurie and Becky to talk about mental health support in schools. Thank you.
Hi there, everybody. I'm Laurie Potter. I'm the operational team lead for one of the mental health support teams. So I cover Wave 1 and Wave 2, which is Gedling, Rushcliffe, Mansfield and Ashfield.
Hi everyone, my name's Becky Burney and I am the operational team lead for Wave 4 of the mental health support teams. That covers the Broxtowe, Bassett Law and Newark and Sherwood localities.
So we've just got a presentation for you today about our service. So the Nottinghamshire mental health support teams, there are 3 core functions. So that's delivering evidence-based interventions for children and young people with mild to moderate mental health problems, and supporting the senior mental health lead in each education setting to introduce and develop their whole school and college approach, which we can talk a little bit more about later, and also giving timely advice to schools and college staff and liaising with external specialist services to help children and young people get the right support and stay in education. we have got a link here to our website, which has got more information, and we will send these slides over.
So when we think a little bit more about the CAMHS mental health support team structure, there are our team leads, which is myself and Laurie, and also Sarah Kinsey, who is in the job share in the role with Laurie, covering wave 1 and wave 2. We have admin for the team, and we currently have 3 team secretaries who are covering the service. We have education mental health practitioners, also known as EMHPs. They can have backgrounds in health and educational roles, and these staff members may be trainees or qualified staff members who have attended local universities to complete specific education training, which focuses on supporting children and young people in educational settings. We also have our Band 6 specialist practitioners, so they are similar to the role in community CAMHS. Those staff members may have a core profession, so could be nursing, allied health professional or social work, and will often have experience of working with children and young people. We have our Band 7 cognitive behavioural therapists within the service. They typically have a core qualification, again, could be nursing, social work, but they have undertaken further higher education, training and registration in cognitive behavioural therapy. We then also have our Band 7 EMHPs, CBT supervisors. So they're employed within the service to provide all case management and clinical supervision to all staff within the mental health support team. So across the service, we are currently hosting trainees. They're employed by the Trust, but they are attending different universities, and those currently are Reading, Derby and Sheffield universities as part of their role.
And so how you access support then with the mental health support team? So we've started recently with self-referral. That's through the single point of access. And referrals should always be discussed with the child and parent before being made to the MHST. Our sort of preferred way, the way that we encourage referrals, is to come via the identified mental health lead in school. And I think that's because we are a collaborative project between education and health. It promotes transparency, enables schools to support young people as well as the clinical professionals. So as I've said, the referrals come in via the CAMHS SPA team, like all referrals into CAMHS. They're screened by the supervisors and screened for suitability for either one-to-one work or maybe groups. The mental health leads will always be informed of the outcome of the screening. The cases are allocated to either the EMHP, the specialist practitioner, or the CBT practitioner within the service. And an assessment date is arranged, which is either in school or a local health site, or more recently we're doing a real blended approach of remote sessions, and that's something that's happened from the COVID pandemic. And then we will commence the intervention with the child and young person and the family.
So when we're thinking about how the CAMHS mental health support team has progressed, you'll have heard both Laurie and I talking about waves, and that's because the project has been implemented in waves. So we have wave 1, wave 2 and wave 4. There is no wave 3 across the county, just to make things more confusing. We are currently collaborating with 112 schools across Nottinghamshire County. The Devlin, Rushcliffe, Mansfield and Ashfield mental health support team sites, again known as wave 1 and wave 2, are now fully operational. However, the wave 4 sites covering Bassett Law, Broxtowe, Newark and Sherwood are currently in their training phase of the project and will become currently fully operational from around January, February 2022.
Yeah. And we have just been successful for future waves as well, which I think is going to be wave 6, which is really positive. So how we can help then? So the work of the MHST clinicians is designed to be early intervention, and it's very much CBT informed practice. So as I've already said, that we can support parents, the child directly, and it's a mixture of either one-to-one direct work or group work. MHST staff will support children and young people, typically who either been experiencing worry, low mood, emotional regulation issues, exam stress, sleep, behaviour difficulties. The list is quite vast. We are very inclusive with it being early intervention. Our specialist practitioners, they also work a little bit more systemically, and the CBT practitioners may work with sort of more specific needs such as phobias, panic, fear, obsessive behaviours, as they have got more extensive training and experience. We do parent group delivery that's based on the Incredible Years programme, and we also do other parent groups such as managing anxiety in children. We do some more sort of health promotion groups for parents that we'll talk about a little bit later on, that we've been delivering remotely recently, and they include general sort of mental health updates for parents and sleep.
So again, just picking up where Laurie left off around the mental health support team group provision. So all the groups are available to children and young people and parents or carers who are referred into our team for an assessment. At assessment, our clinicians will ascertain if a group is suitable for the child or young person, parent or carer, or whether individual work would be the preferred option due to the level of need or circumstances for that child or family at that time. It's really important to us that the referrals into the team specify whether the child or young person, parent or carer would be suitable for a group if possible. This just really ensures that when we screen in those referrals, that we can address the needs of the child and young person as quickly as possible. All groups and workshops have been developed by mental health support team staff and are tailored to specific age groups and needs. Some of those workshops may last around 60 minutes, whereas some of the groups will deliver treatment on a sessional basis and will, sort of adhere to clinical guidance around that, so it would be more longer in duration than the workshops.
Here are just a few examples of our groups and workshops. I won't read through them all, but again, as Becky said, we tend to do sessional groups where there is an identified need with a parent, young person, and we tend to do more health promotion based workshops that are targeted for all parents, so very much more sort of part of the whole school approach. We also do workshops for staff.
Lovely, thanks, Laurie. Part of our a major part of our role as well is looking at whole school approach. This is really important when we're delivering early intervention. There's quite a list there, but this isn't limited to. So we do offer a lot of whole school approach interventions, everything from assemblies to promote mental health and wellbeing, from workshops, again, as we spoke about before, implemented to local area need, but also it's really important to keep those well children well. We support carry out mental health audits. This allows us to identify a need for a mental health support team referral at an earlier stage, but it also supports us with developing a baseline of mental health within those schools, so that we've got that data set as well to work from. Again, as Laurie says, staff wellbeing, using virtual platforms helps us to reach wider, developing practical steps to manage wellbeing. We're really strong believers that we can't have mentally healthy children and young people if we haven't got mentally healthy staff within those schools. So that's really important. Parent workshops, again, these can be large workshops, particularly with our virtual platforms that we're using, and is focused on mental health awareness and wellbeing for parents as well. Again, same principle applies to them. They need to be mentally well and have an awareness around mental health in order to support their children and young people. We have our mental health lead networks. These are fortnightly, and these are for teachers from each locality to meet with clinicians and leads within the teams. We can troubleshoot and discuss cases for referral, along with opportunities for training and spaces to share good practice. This has been acknowledged nationally as well as an example of good practice, what we're doing here in Nottinghamshire. So that's something we're quite proud about. And in the operational waves, in Wave 1 and Wave 2, we're currently piloting promotion of self-referral from children and young people, and it's hoped that over time we'll be able to do this alongside the healthy family teams to promote that joint working and build on our existing services as well.
So that's the end of our presentation. If you've got any questions, then feel free to drop us an email. We're available on Global. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone.
probably all agree that it's really great to hear about what's available to our children and young people. But again, that theme there of making sure the staff that are teaching the children are well looked after, that's really good to hear. So moving on, I'm going to introduce Jackie Hogan, who is a member of the resourcing team, and Jackie is going to talk to us about the Gold Covenant.
Hello everyone, hi, nice to be here. I'm Jackie Hogan, member of the corporate team, really working on resourcing initiatives in the trust, and I'm also the HR lead for Armed Forces. So that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. We move on to the first slide, please. So, how do we support the Armed Forces in the Trust? Trust initially signed up to the Armed Forces Covenant in 2015, demonstrating our support and commitment to Armed Forces personnel, both locally, nationally, and within the workforce itself. We recognise the value that forces bring to the Trust as to our business. And we're currently reorganising to re-sign that covenant during Armed Forces Week, which is next week, the 21st of June to the 26th of June. Next slide, please. Our employer recognition scheme, which is part of the Armed Forces Covenant, demonstrated at the highest level of support. We were awarded Gold Award during 2016, and that is due for revalidation this year. We have currently submitted our application, and we're hoping to have the announcement made probably towards the end of July, and we'll be celebrating that at that time. Next slide, please. So Armed Forces Week, what we'll be doing, we've got social media posts throughout the week celebrating events. On Monday, we aim to raise the flag at DMH. Our board will be present on that day. On Wednesday is Reservist Day, and then there is an event locally in West Bridgeford for Armed Forces Day proms in the park. And there's a link on the slides there for if you want to find out more about events that are happening across the locality. Next slide, please. So what have we done so far? We have developed an Armed Forces web page, giving you information about policies that support reservists, cadet adult volunteers, and those that are called up on duty. You can have the opportunity to join our register if you are a member of the Armed Forces family. Please do get in touch. We would like to talk to you, and obviously feedback from the web pages that we have are also part of our recruitment microsite as well, that are externally facing. We'd like to hear from you, so if there's anybody that hasn't joined that network or wants to join the network, please do get in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. I'm sure we'll all agree that was really good to hear and good to see that we are going to renew our commitment next week. So the next bit we're going to move to is the good news story. And that's going to be about least restricted practice this time. That comes from Martina Clark, modern matron, Sue Widdowson, and team leader, and both of those are members of the team at the Topaz ward at Rampton.
Hi everyone, my name is Martina Clark and I'm a modern matron within the National High Secure Healthcare Service for Women at Rampton Hospital. I'm here today to talk to Sue Widdowson, who's one of our team leaders on Topaz ward, for the purpose of this month's good news story for Connecting Knots. I recently nominated Sue for a positive star, following some excellent feedback from Sue's ward manager, Lauren Wilkinson, about all the fantastic work she's been doing with her named patient, Kaylee. So Sue, I've got a few questions to ask you today, if that's okay.
Yep.
So firstly, how did it feel to be nominated for a Positive Star?
I think it's always good to get recognition for work that you do. And I think when it's a Positive Star, just by the title itself, makes it feel that you're doing your job well. I didn't realise that the nomination was going to happen. And I think sometimes you do your job and to the best of your ability, but to be recognised is always a really good feeling. So yeah, and a pat on the back's always good, regardless of where you are in your career, and whatever level you're working at. So yeah, it was lovely. It was nice to get.
Brilliant. So can you just give us a brief overview of Kaylee's presentation and behaviour when you took over as her name nurse?
Okay, Kaylee was very distraught, very. She'd had a lot of breakdowns in therapeutic relationships with her teams that she'd had previously, named nurses, associates, and the like. She was constantly in some form of mechanical restraint. She was very hostile towards staff. There was several serious attempts of self-harm, and so that resulted in the mechanical restraints being in place for most of the time. She did not trust staff at all, and that impacted a lot on the interaction she had with staff as well. So it was quite a concern for me that was something I was having to go into and sort of try and erase all the bad experiences she'd had with previous perceived issues she had with staff, I'd like to say, because I think the staff that had worked with her before were good staff. It was just, there was a lot of conflict, and I think it's difficult when you're trying your best with a patient that then just sees you as just being a problem rather than helping with the solution. So it was a very challenging thing to actually face with her, to be fair.
So you mentioned a bit about the trust, and we know how important it is to develop our trust with our patients.
Yeah.
How did you go about doing that and nurturing that as part of your name nurse relationship?
I think we started very basically. I think initially we got to know each other, and I think to get to know Kaylee, and you need to know sort of what prompts the behaviours that she does. So it was really sort of a really stripped back kind of relationship initially, and we had regular name nurse sessions, and we made sure that we did it as a proactive session rather than reactive, which is what she'd really experienced quite a lot of, because it was just always she was getting a session when she'd done something wrong, and I wanted to change it to it being a more proactive thing. So it wasn't, so we'd go in and we could talk without it being addressing anything. So we could just talk and have a session, an hour-long session, for her to tell me her problems rather than me saying what's going on and why have you done this. So it was really a very stripped back relationship initially.
And were there any particular obstacles that you needed to overcome?
There was a few things, because I was quite new to the ward. I'd only had a very limited experience with Kaylee initially, and it would have been if I'd been moved to the ward or anything. So a big thing was, because she'd been such a challenging patient initially, the staff on the ward were still looking at Kaylee as Kaylee was. And that was part of my mission, as well as getting Kaylee to trust us more, was to get the staff to look at Kaylee differently. Because a very wise person once told me, if you treat somebody the same, how can you expect them to change? And that was something I worked with on the team, because as soon as she showed a sign of being agitated, they automatically escalated to what Kaylee used to be. And I was saying, well, no, what we need to do is let's look at Kaylee as she is now. So that was a big challenge, really. But also with Kaylee herself, when she would escalate, it was sort of, we were trying to say to her, look, Kaylee, in response to what you're doing, is this the level you need to go to? So there was that challenge as well. And to be fair, she responded really well to that.
And was there anything or anyone that helped you in your role in particular?
I've developed a good relationship with her family, which has been quite useful really, because they quite voluntarily gave me some of their insight in how she'd been in the past. And I do think sometimes when you've got the family on board, you can generate a better relationship with your patient as well, because you become part of the team then, and they're then part of the team. So if they see, when they see an improvement, it then becomes they want to get more involved, and so she's had a lot of these purple virtual visits, and it's been really good because they've been quite supportive, and I've tried to attend them whenever I possibly can so that we keep that link together. But they've also felt quite comfortable in order to ring me at work if they're concerned about anything. So it's been quite a good team work altogether, really, with the family included.
Super. That's great. I'm now going to ask Kaylee some questions herself about you and your approach, and it'd be really nice if you can stay on the line and sit in and hear what she's got to say about you and the care she's received from you.
Yeah.
So, Kaylee, thank you very much for agreeing to speak to us this afternoon. First question that I want to ask you is, what is it about Sue's approach as named nurse that you found most helpful?
Basically, she didn't do it like everyone else. Like everyone else just sort of read your notes and think they know you. Well, Sue actually got to know me before committing, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and how has Sue made a difference to you and your care?
She's put that trust in me, which has given me the confidence to actually want to do well, to want to achieve stuff.
And you're achieving an awful amount, aren't you? You're doing really, really well.
I'm hoping to be out this year.
Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. So, Kaylee, can you think back? What were the challenges along the way and how did you overcome these?
A lot of my challenges were more related to self-harm.
Okay.
And the way Sue helped me was she would sit and talk to me and try and figure out what we could do to notify people when I was feeling a certain way. Mm-hmm. So I've got flashcards. I don't have them on me at the minute because I've not got any pockets. But we did some flashcards, so they've got a picture on the front, a dragon in different colours. And on the back of them, they've got a little bit like, says a little bit like I'm settled or I'm struggling or things like that. And we're doing a weight loss chart.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And the last question is, what are you most looking forward to about your future?
Moving on, having a family, being with my family, because there's a lot more to life than being in hospital.
There absolutely is. And I just wanted to say, obviously it was myself that put Sue forward for a positive star, based on the feedback that we'd got from Lauren. But Lauren did say if I could, I'd really like to put Kaylee forward as well for a positive star, for all the hard work and that she's made, you know, with Sue. So well done to you. It's great to see all the progress that you've made, and all the best of luck for your future.
Thank you.
I hope that was nice, Sue, to hear some reflections from Kaylee.
It was.
Thank you once again for all your hard work and for everything that you're doing, and thanks for chatting to me this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you later.
Thank you.
What a really powerful and personal story. I'm sure I'm not the only one who is requiring a tissue at this point. I think that was a really great example of why what we do here is so important, and why patient-centred care is just at the front and centre of what we should do. And as Paul Devlin has just said in the chat, compassion in action is absolutely right. So I don't know how to segue us neatly from that into the Q&A, but that's where we're going to go next. So if you haven't had an opportunity to put your question in the chat, please do so. So for the first question, I'm going to come to John, and someone has asked a question about PPE. So particularly PPE when fresh air sessions are taking place with patients in outdoor areas of the hospital and staff being asked to wear masks whilst outdoors. John, can you comment on whether or not that's contrary to government advice, which doesn't require us to wear PPE when outdoors? Can you clarify our position?
Yeah, so it's a great question and something that's just become apparent sort of on the hoof, as it were, and we talked about it briefly at Exec yesterday, and it's a really important piece of advice that we need to make sure we get right, and we're aware at the moment that there may be some inconsistency in what we're doing. So for the immediate short term, we'll take the position of please continue to wear masks, but we will over the next day or two re-clarify the guidance and making sure that we are interpreting it properly and specifically restate the position on outdoor activities. So in essence, we're a bit uncertain at the minute, and I don't want to make statements on this forum without being clear exactly what our position is and how it pertains to the guidance. So if people don't mind just bearing with us over the next couple of days, we will get clarity on that. But thank you very much for raising it, because it's really important that we do get that right. Thank you.
Thank you, John. So the second question we've had, which I'm going to take the liberty of answering, is whether or not the Trust has an LGBT network. The Trust has a gender identity, gender and sexual orientation equality steering group, and that helps the Trust develop its policy regarding these really important issues. When that group last met in May this year, they have agreed to re-explore the LGBT+ network, as that's not been something in the past that gained much traction. So absolutely a commitment to establish that network, and if anyone is at all interested in being part of it, please email Catherine Conchar and she'll be very pleased to hear from you, I'm sure. And then the final question that we have relates to Carers Week, and so Tracy, I'm going to come back to you. Someone has commented on how important it's been to highlight support that unpaid carers need, who are staff within the Trust, and how helpful the Connect page really is. They've also asked the question about where the shared stories may be, as they would be helpful, I think, for sharing some of the learning as well as inspiring and powerful messages.
Lovely. Thank you for that, Lorraine. I can't see the red box, but I think I'm on screen. So yeah, we had over 150 hits on the carers page on the first day that we launched, and that's generated a massive amount of feedback from carers who'd like to tell their story. So what we're currently doing is taking the stories that we had from Carers Week, which were linked to the involvement pages through the comms, putting them into a template, and we're actually bringing some of those stories to life in these powerful pod chats and films that we're seeing shared today. So over the next week, we will continue to give a voice to all of those carers who've come forward to say that they'd like to share their story. We'll be putting them into a template where it's narrative, or filming them where people are happy to be filmed, and they will be added to the web page as we progress through our carers journey, really. So I would encourage people to keep coming back, and we will do links through John's email when there are updates to alert people to the fact that there's stories there of people that they probably know and work with.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. So I haven't seen any more questions. So at this point, I'm going to move over to Yolanda, who is going to talk to us about the Oscars last week, which was a really brilliant event. Yolanda?
I'm Yolanda Martin, Associate Director of Communications and Engagement. Sorry about that. We had an absolutely fabulous Oscars online virtual event, and this year we had a whopping 434 nominations, the most nominations we've ever had in the 18 years that we've been running the Oscars. And you know, we had loads more than last year, 184 more nominations than last year. And we were able to allow 200 people to enjoy the virtual ceremony. So some people got together in groups, some people joined on their own. Social distancing was respected in all cases, and it was absolutely fabulous. So if I could just give you a quick snippet of the winners. I think Jordan's got a video that he's about to cue and run. That would be fabulous. It's only a few seconds long. I think it's less than a minute long. So yes, so we've got various winners. The names are popping up there, but Karen, we've got Elizabeth Archer, we've got the Loudon Grange healthcare team. Absolutely loads and loads and loads of winners. When you look at the teams and how many people were able to celebrate with us on that day, it was absolutely fabulous. A nice bit of virus there in the middle of that one. I'm sure that one's not contagious though, but they are keeping a respectful distance from the virus. Absolutely lovely to see so many teams that got together, and the chat that was going on as the awards was going on was absolutely phenomenal as well, and some lovely personal stories. The highlight of the day was the Lifetime Achievement winner. Pictured there, all happy and smiling. It really was a lovely, lovely event. I think we've got another slide then, Jordan, I think, of the, oh, there we go, over to the feedback. So these are just some of the comments that were received on the day. So it was really inspirational. Everybody talked about how uplifting it was, congratulating each other, you know, even for the people that were nominated, it was brilliant. For those that were shortlisted, everybody was sharing the love and saying how great it was to be shortlisted. Everybody was proud of the patients and the support we got from them as well. We have had mostly positive feedback, so we're going to continue to do some more evaluation. We're, as a comms team and the OD team, we're meeting up together to look at what the feedback is telling us once we've received that in. Those who participated in the event have all received an evaluation form to fill out, but we are always open to any comments from anybody at the oscars@notshcnhs.uk event email, and we're hoping next time to have a face-to-face event. We've also created a Celebrating Success page on our website, celebrating all the achievements of colleagues across the Trust. So not just about the Oscars, but also about any awards that we get shortlisted for and any accreditations that we have. So that page is live on the external facing website. So I think I'm handing back to you now, Lorraine, if that's all right. Thank you.
You are. Thank you. So in the spirit of some of the really good bits of what we do, the positive stars hopefully will show on the screen in a moment. 35 individual nominations in May and 8 team nominations, which when you put that in the context of all that was going on with the Oscars as well, that's really brilliant to see that we're taking the time to identify those who are positive stars. So there's all the names of those teams and individuals there. And this month's winner was Dr. Pratish Thakkar. Dr. Thakkar only joined the Trust in November 2020, but his nomination talks extremely highly of how Dr. Thakkar has really listened to his patients and how he's responded and changed the culture in the team and helped some of the patients in our deaf services at Rampton. So congratulations to Dr. Thakkar, so much to have achieved in such a short space of time. So I think, unless someone reliably tells me in the chat, that brings us to the end of today's event. Thank you all for tuning in. It's been really great to be here today. I think we've heard some really fantastic things. The mental health support teams and the least restrictive practice, and Sue and her experience with an individual at Rampton, I think are really powerful things that I think are really good motivators for me personally, as well as to why we keep doing what we're doing. So thank you all. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week and that it is calm. And as you get to the weekend, you get an opportunity, if not to enjoy the sunshine, at least to have some downtime. So thank you all. Goodbye.